Right. Okay, everybody, folks. It is. Folks. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for being here today. For the City of Cheyenne, February 7th, 2023 Public Services Committee meeting. If that's what you're here for, you're in the right place. If you're not here for that meeting, I don't know where you're supposed to be. So anyway, a lot of you are here. I recognize all the faces from the last couple of the meetings, frankly. So a lot of you are here for a few specific instances. Because there are a lot of you here to speak on a couple specific things. As you know, I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to speak. But that being said, we have a long agenda today. So if you'd be kind enough to limit your comments to about 3 minutes, as we've been doing the last few meetings, we do appreciate that. We do want you to be heard. But as you know, there's a lot of stuff on here. So anyway, with that, if you intend to speak, whether you're online or here in the room, come up to the podium, turn on the microphone, identify who you are for the record, in case staff or somebody needs to follow up with you. If you do have any devices, phones, anything like that, if you could please turn it off or silence it during the meeting, we do appreciate that. For those of you online, same thing. If you're not speaking, if you would mute yourselves, that would be much appreciated. Lastly, just all public comment in committee meetings should be limited to items that are on the agenda. If you have public comment or anything like that for any items that are not on this agenda, those comments can be taken at the city council meeting next Monday. They will not be entertained here. Only comment on the items that are on this agenda will be entertained during this meeting. With that, Madam Clerk, item number 7, please.
Number 7, ordinance third reading, annexing to the City of Cheyenne, Wyoming, land located southwest of the intersection of Ridge Road and Holland Court.
Do we have a staff report?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, my name is Seth Floyd. I am currently online. I'm assuming everybody can hear me okay in the room.
I believe so. I'm seeing some nods. You're coming through pretty good.
Okay, this annexation proposes annexing approximately just over 10 acres of land in a county pocket. It has been the stated goal of the governing body to annex county pockets, so this is definitely in accordance with that goal. However, the associated zone change, which is the next item on the agenda, I'm sure we're all aware, is the more controversial item. Due to its nature, staff recommends approval of this annexation, and I don't have any other updates on this item. No, it's not been changed since our last meeting. I would note, though, that the applicant, I believe, wants to postpone this item and its related projects, which are the zone change, which is the next item on the agenda, and then the plat, which is the first resolution on the agenda. I'm available for any questions on this project, and owing to the integrated nature of the project, I'll entertain questions on the associated zone change as well.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Glad to hear your voice. Thank you for being here with us. And we'll certainly let you know if there are any questions for you specifically. Are there any questions for Mr. Lloyd from the committee? Mr. Emmons, would you like to provide a developer's report?
Chairman, council members, Brad Emmons, AVI agent for the applicant, Bedrock Development LLC, who's also here. Again, we are working forward with these 3 projects, items number 7, 8, and 15. We are requesting a postponement at this time. We did talk about doing a step down on the buildings within 120 feet of the west property line. We're working on those elevations to be able to show those to the neighbors and have some meetings set up. The developers also met with some of the neighbors already, and I'll let Jason speak to that stuff as well. The other item that has been discussed with some of the neighbors is moving the Holland Court access further east, and we will continue to look at that and try to come up with a plan to move that access further to the east with the city engineer. So those are my comments, and I'll let Jason speak to, from the development side.
The chair does have a question, I guess, either for Jason or Mr. Emmons, but I will ask you gentlemen if you have any questions before I ask mine. Go ahead if you'd like, Mr. Laybourne.
Thank you. I understand the request for the postponement. So am I correct that it is not policy that we do the zone change with the annexation? It's just more of a complete process. Is that what I'm understanding?
I was gonna ask the same question to Mr. Emmons, just, I mean, do we need to, is it your hope that all three are postponed? Just so they stay in sequence, or do you wish to move forward with the annexation and postpone the other ones?
Mr. Chairman, through you, I'll let Jason speak to it. I think we thought just to keep them all together would make more sense. I don't know that it is required that they all three get postponed, but at this point, we thought it made more sense to postpone the three of them.
Thank you.
Jason, if you did, we'll go ahead and, if you'd like to add anything.
Mr. Chairman, through you, Jason Stephen with Bedrock Development. Just to kind of reiterate what Brad had mentioned is that we were making an attempt to meet individually with the different property owners that are to the west of this property, adjacent, butting up against it individually, because we wanted to get some of their concerns directly from them with what we've proposed so far, and try to address those concerns one-on-one. As you've maybe have heard, and we've talked a little bit about stepping the buildings back for that first 120 feet down to 2 stories. And we're just finishing up some renderings now of what that would look like and what those changes entail. We've also talked about adjusting the entrance on the north side to a different location, or, potentially making that just a fire exit only. And we need a little bit more time to work through the city with that. So that would be why we're requesting the postponement, sir.
And that's certainly reasonable. I just wanted to, so you would like to just do all three of them?
Yes, Chairman, through you, I'd like to just do all of them together so that they're all in sequence. And then if we decide to make a different change or another change, there's a potential that a plat could possibly change too. So.
Thank you. I just want to be clear with that. And I certainly appreciate your willingness and your desire to continue working with the neighbors. So I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee for the developer before we open up for public comment?
Sorry, to your questions about keeping all three together. So he has his hand raised.
Go ahead, Mr. Lloyd.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, in regards to keeping all the projects together, it's best to have a zone ready to be assigned to land to be annexed, because until we have a zone assigned, we don't really have a good ability to enforce any zoning code requirements on a property. Of course, we can still enforce normal municipal code type violations, but zoning code would be a little ambiguous until we assign the zone. So it's best practice to get the zone and the annexation together in that process.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Jason. I'll go ahead and open it up to public comment at this time. If anyone would like to come up again, we are on the proposed annexation. Again, we have heard that The developer would like some more time and we'll be asking this panel to postpone, but I just want to open it up for public comment.
Mr. Chair, is the comment just on the postponement?
Yes.
Okay, how do you want it just on the postponement or?
You would need a motion if you want.
Okay. Do you care? All right, so the public comment would be on the proposed annexation. Ma'am, go ahead. Come on up to the podium, please, if you wish. If you'd like to turn that microphone on and then identify who you are, if you would, thank you very much.
My name is Cindy Anderson. My husband and I own the property on Plateau Court. We are, as he was told, he went to the first meeting, was told that the one building that they are proposing would be 35 feet from our back fence. We have lived there since '06, have done a lot of improvements. By putting a building there, we not only lose our ability to see anything except a building, plus we lose all our privacy because a 2 or 3 story building looks right into our backyard, which looks into our house. And 10 feet of that 35 is our easement. So it's 25 feet from our property. And we would really like to just say, you know, houses would be one thing. 2 and 3 story apartment buildings are a whole nother. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Anderson. Any further public comment? Do we have any hands raised online, Madam Clerk? Ma'am, did you have public comment? Go ahead and come on up. On the annexation?
Good afternoon. I just have a question. Who is responsible for the sidewalks and the sewer hookup for those people who are not in the city? Do they have to pay for those themselves? That's just my question. Who I am? Sorry, I'm Elizabeth Staple, 3305 Thomas Road.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I will get an answer for you. I'm going to have my planning and development director try to address that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee,
Mhm.
upon annexation, that does not trigger installation or development of roads or sidewalks. That would ultimately be the responsibility of a developer who is either subdividing the land into multiple parcels or they're developing it with a new use that would trigger a site plan review. So the development of the sidewalk and roads would occur in this case upon initiation of their development action.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Does that, ma'am, did that address your question? No, did that address your question? Would you like to? Okay, all right. Well, this gentleman is very knowledgeable, so he can try to answer your question. All right. Any further public comment here in the room related to the proposed annexation? Madam Clerk, do we have any raised hands?
I'm not seeing any raised hands online. Okay. Seeing and hearing no
Public comment, the chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Seagrave.
I would move to approve.
Second,
And
Moved and seconded by, moved by Mr. Seagrave, seconded by Mr. Laybourne.
Mr. Chair, I
Mr.
I would
Seagrave,
move to postpone for 2 weeks.
second,
moved by Mr. Seagrave to postpone and seconded by Mr. Laybourne. Okay. All right, any public comment on the proposed 2-week postponement? Comment related to the postponement?
It's
Go
more
ahead,
of a
sir.
question than a comment, but my name is John Cecil. I live
Thanks,
at
John.
3217 Smith Place. And my question is, okay, if we postpone this, I'm assuming that then everything rolls back to city council meetings and everything else. So we're just gonna roll everything back another
Yes.
2 weeks? Okay.
Yes,
I just so everybody knows what the new meeting dates and all that are for it. Is my concern. I guess.
yes, so the recommendation, if the recommendation to postpone is passed today, so then we will still go next Monday night to the meeting. And we have to, the council as a whole will have to vote on that, just because we vote to recommend a postponement today, doesn't make that automatic. So we still have to go in front of the entire council and say, hey, we heard the conversation the other day, the developer wants to postpone. We recommend that it postpone. Then if the postponement is voted on Monday, yes, then it would come back to this body again, and then to another city council meeting.
Okay.
So
Thank-
this is just merely a recommendation to postpone today. It's not ironclad and set in stone. But, typically it should move forward at the meeting next Monday.
Thank you.
And
Yes,
just, Chair, just to be clear, just so that everybody in this room knows, the next meeting of the committee will be Wednesday, the 22nd, because we will have a holiday that week. So I just want to make sure that that's clear as well.
Thank you. That's President's Day week. Okay. Any further public comment related to the postponement? Do we have any hands raised online? All right. Seeing and hearing no public comment, all those in favor of the postponement?
aye.
Those opposed? Okay. All right. The recommendation for next Monday's city council meeting of this proposed ordinance on third reading will be for a 2-week postponement. Next item, please.
Number 8, ordinance third reading, amending the official zoning map of the city of Cheyenne, changing the zoning classification from county A-1 agricultural and rural residential to NR3 neighborhood residential high density for land located southwest of the intersection of Ridge Road and Holland Court.
Mr. Lloyd, did you want to provide a staff report?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Seth Lloyd. I'm with the City of Cheyenne Planning and Development Department. This zone change proposal proposes giving the city zone to the land we're proposing to annex with the previous item on the agenda. The proposal by the applicant is to zone land NR3, which is high density residential zone. That zone district is intended for higher density residential uses. The Planning Commission discussed this item and recommended denial of this item by a vote of 5-4. The City Council obviously approved it at its last meeting on second reading, possibly just to continue it forward for further discussion. But there's been no changes in the application since the last committee meeting, but I'm available for any questions on this item. I should also note that with postponement of the annexation, we highly recommend that you postpone this item as well, just so that they line up together.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Duly noted. Any questions from the committee for Mr. Lloyd? Is there a developer's report? Would you like the opportunity? You certainly don't have to. I think we know where you stand, but want you to have the opportunity.
Chairman, council members Brad Emmons, AVI, again, requesting the 2-week postponement, but would be happy to answer any questions the council has on the zoning at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Emmons. Any questions for Mr. Emmons from the committee? Public comment from here in the room, again, related to the proposed zone change. It's not.
Okay. Peggy Escamilla at 3231 Smith Place at the corner of Holland and Smith. And I've voiced my concerns many times, but I'm still very concerned about the drainage issues. And I would really encourage all of you as council members to come out and look at that property, because starting right behind my house, it drops off about mid yard, and then it is a significant drop and slope. Now, in my mind, the only way you can put apartments out there is to put a retaining wall, and that would have to be pretty high. So starting about halfway from my yard, further on down, that would pretty much be above the homes. And when you have a concrete slab there with all these buildings on it, water's going to run off of there, and it's going to go where it naturally flows. And the plans, as I see, is to try and divert it to the east and the southeast. Once again, I don't know how you divert the natural flow of water. So really, I seriously encourage you to come out and look at that property before you act any further on it, because there is a serious slope of land and dip. And the woman on Plateau Court, she definitely would be way below that area. And I think drainage was a big concern for Thomas Heights. I think it would be a huge issue. So before anyone acts, please come look at this property.
Thank you, Mrs. Escamilla. I used to live in the area actually for about 10 years, and I drive along Ridge through that area at least probably about 7 or 8 times a week. So I don't know if I'm assuming everyone else is familiar with it, but yeah, I am very familiar with that space, and you bring up excellent points. Further public comment within the room, again, related to the proposed zone change. Go ahead, Mr. Cecil.
That one? Am I on? Okay, all right, good. John Cecil, 3217 Smith Place. I still have my same issues that I've talked about at all these meetings before. I guess my biggest concern right now, besides the drainage issue out there, is postponing this one. I'm not sure is going to do much good, because I think the neighborhood basically feels that, you know, this doesn't fit in with our neighborhood. Once again, to us, it's like a monster in the middle of our neighborhood, where they're pushing all those apartments right back into us, putting their garages along the streets and pushing everything back further to us. It's my understanding they're going to try to flatten that out. They're going to try to build that up with 8-10 feet of soil. You know, and if it's going to be luxury apartments, make it a gated community. And then you'd have another 10-foot wall above that. I don't know. I just think it's not right for the neighborhood. I don't think it will affect the schools, the drainages, the traffic. I just don't think it's a good fit with the neighborhood being surrounded. I mean, I know there's a lot of these complexes going in. I know there's a lot of need for housing, but they can be put out and people can choose to build around those. We've been all in our neighborhoods for years. So I think, you know, postponing this, I'm not sure is going to satisfy the neighbors. I guess that's my point. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cecil. Further further public comment on the zone change?
Do I have it on? Yes. Roger Alexander, 3212 Holland Court. I provided comments at the last committee meeting and at the city council meeting, so I'm not going to go over those again. I will just summarize that I object to the rezoning to an NR3 based on criteria number 2, the compatibility with existing uses, and criteria number 8, which is public health and safety and welfare. I would also like to make, I'd echo Peggy's suggestion that anybody who isn't familiar with that area, get a hold of one of us neighbors. We'd be happy to take you out there and show you around from our perspective, not necessarily from Ridge Road, but from my front yard, Peggy's backyard. I also have two other requests. One, I would like to be included in the negotiations for the Holland Court access road. That's going to affect me directly. And second, I'd like to see a copy of the traffic report that the staff, somebody supposedly did. I'd like to see how they analyze the traffic flows on Holland Court. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander. No, come on up.
Elizabeth Staple, 3305 Thomas Road. I'm going to quote Mayor Collins. He said, "We don't want what happened at Thomas Heights." That's exactly what he said. I mentioned to him that I have it on good authority that there's water issues has been in Thomas Heights. And that was his comment. Thomas Heights is across from the proposed apartment complex. And we all know that there was a flood in 2014. So that's something we all taken to account of as we make plans to build. Now, I talked to an executive at the City of Cheyenne planning, and he said he did not like retainment pools. He said that you can get mosquitoes from retainment pools. He also said that there has to be a way out of the pools. The water can't just stay there. It has to be drained away. So when I talked to the gentleman working on this complex, they said the way that we're going to do that is it's just going to be absorbed in the air. It's just going to go away. But we all know when the spring rains come and the summer rains come, and we know that the weather is very unpredictable in Cheyenne, Wyoming. So we don't know how much rain's going to fall. We don't know if it's going to overflow the retainment pools. We don't know. But it's our responsibility to know. It's our responsibility to take into account all the things that might happen in this neighborhood and in this apartment complex, because floods wreak havoc. And we're all aware of that. I walked in a flood, so I know what it's like up to my waist. So I get it. Okay, so anyway, we talked about evaporation and about drainage. Now I'm going to talk about parking spaces. So the plan was to have 207 units. Okay, so everybody's got a car. Most everybody has a car. Teenagers have a car. And a lot of people have more than one car. So now we're going to put 207 units. I'm going to go fast. 207 units on 10 acres, a pool, a parking garage, retainment ponds. Then we've got to shovel the snow off somewhere. Okay, so now we've got a lot going on. I was amazed. I drove across Thomas Road over Ridge into this neighborhood where you're planning to put an apartment complex. These are narrow roads. Thomas Road is narrow and Holland Court is narrow. The question is, how narrow? About 3 car widths. That's how narrow they are. So when you have all the teenagers and all the people parking their cars because they own them and they want to drive them and they want to get to work and they want to get to their recreation, they're going to park wherever they can. So, I'm very concerned about that. By the way, I don't have any complaints, but the snowplow comes down Thomas Road once a year. So now I just can't even imagine the havoc wrecked here. You've got cars on both sides. Nobody can, it's gridlocked. This is no longer a traffic issue. This is a gridlock. You can't get up and down. You will not be able to if you have parking all over the place. So that's a concern of mine. I'm going to finish up.
Thank you.
So you're planning an emergency road on Holland Court. And I understand about the lady talking about the slope. I estimate it somewhere around 20 feet. You have perched houses on that hill. If you adjacently dig with your machines and the rains come, I'm really concerned that some of those houses are going to slip. And when they slip, it's going to be really awful. And I am very concerned about that. So I'm just very concerned about all the things that they're planning to put on 10 acres. And I thank you for consideration, your time.
Thank you. Further public comment from here in the room?
This thing on?
Yes,
Excellent.
sir.
Hey, members of the council. My name is Matt Casper. I'm a project manager with Gateway Homes. First off, just wanted to say, the community has been very welcoming. I've spent some time getting to know some folks, going door to door, as a representative of Gateway. We are concerned with people's concerns. I am accessible, and I just want people to know, I have a bunch of business cards here with me, and I am more than happy to speak with other members individually of the community. Everyone voices valid concerns. There tends to be a lot of speculation as to what the impact of the proposed development is going to be. And I've been in Peggy's backyard. I've been in John's backyard. I've met with Roger and his wife. These concerns are legitimate. And what I've done is I've written them down. I'll be meeting with Jason. The reason for the postponement is so that we can take into account some of the considerations of members of the community and incorporate those into some of the designs. And address any of those issues before it goes through. But we're not going to spend a bunch of money making final designs. Everyone's aware of that. The other issue is that we have a housing shortage in Cheyenne. And when we're talking about 5,000 units needed over the next 5 years, the only way to do that is with density. And when you look at the zoning map, there are literally 8 properties that are zoned NR3 in the city of Cheyenne. Those are all purchased and developed on. So the question is, where does the density take place? So I'm just here to let people know we're willing to work with members of the community. And I really do hope that people reach out and contact me. Come see me after the meeting, grab a card. I'd love to chat with people. That's all I have for you. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Further public comment?
I guess I'm tall. And you'll have to bear with me as I read because I lose my mind when I come up here. I do have the 2 areas of concern with criteria 2 and criteria 8. Oh, sorry. I'm Rebecca Murchie from 3222 Thomas Road. And looking at criteria 2, which is compatibility with nearby properties, the land considered for rezoning is surrounded on all sides by 1 to 2 story single-family homes. The proposed development represents at least 3 times the density of the current neighborhood. Also, the current neighborhood is made up of homes, not rentals. No matter how well managed, renters do not have the same investment or commitment to the property and its upkeep. Many of the current residents of Crestridge have lived there 20+ years, illustrating longevity versus the transient nature of rental properties. And researching the studies that supposedly illustrate the positive nature of integrating single-family homes with high-density dwellings, those were all done in urban areas, and they were urban areas that were in need of revitalization and renovation, not in the middle of an already existing stable neighborhood. And looking at criteria 8, the public health, safety, and welfare, the concerns continue regarding the drainage. You guys have heard about that. Increased traffic flow and related safety risks, overcrowding of local schools, increased emergency calls to police and fire, noise and light pollution, infringement on privacy, inadequate parking. And to summarize, the current residents of the neighborhood, whether new or long-term, stated that they stand to lose what prompted them to choose this location in the first place. A quiet, safe, peaceful neighborhood to raise their children and for some of us to retire. I continue to be told that the rezoning to NR3 is a done deal, that these meetings are just for show, that you all really don't take into consideration any of our input. I choose to believe that this is not true, that you as elected city council members are here to listen to, hear, and represent your constituents. We have made it clear in these meetings and also through our petition that we really want a no vote to NR3 zoning. Thank you.
Thank you. Further public comment. No, I was pointing at you.
Okay.
I know you're gonna get up and talk. You've been telling me for 45 minutes.
Now,
Go.
okay, my name is Sharon Tuggle, and I live at 3122 Holland Court. And I am so against these apartments. The traffic is going to be horrendous down through there, not to mention the parking, and our property values are definitely going to go down. I don't know where they talked about a survey, because it certainly wasn't in our area, and it's probably taken in New York or something. I think we need a public vote of the residents in the area that's actually affected, because I don't know if any of the council members actually live in that area. And I think that that's what's important. I'm concerned about garbage pickup. That, like she said, the streets are very narrow, and to put extra cars parking along there, I think it's going to be a nightmare. I'm also concerned about mail delivery, because as of right now, we usually get our mail around 6 o'clock in the evening, which is ridiculous, but that's mail delivery. I think condos would be better than apartments, because at least they would be sold and they would be a little bit more invested. And I'm concerned about the drainage issues as well. And I'm concerned about the schools, the overcrowding of the schools. I think that with that many people being brought in, 207 apartments, I don't care how well, like she said, I don't care how well they are managed. There are going to be deadbeats in there. Just because they have a little bit of money doesn't mean that they're not deadbeats. And we're going to have drugs brought into the area. And I'm concerned about that, because I do have a child still in school. And I'm also concerned, like I said, about how many council members actually live in that area, actually have visited the area and know the area. I haven't been talked to except by one person. So I don't know where they're getting that they've talked to all the neighbors, because they haven't. Anyway, that's my opinion. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Any further public comment, again, related to the proposed zoning change? Seeing and hearing none. Jennifer, do we have any raised hands? Seeing and hearing no additional public comment, the chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd move to approve.
Second.
Seconded,
Mr. Chair.
moved by I've been asked that I have to read that in now. Jeff doesn't do it though. Moved by Mr. Seagrave, seconded by Mr. Laybourne. Mr. Seagrave,
Mr. Chair, I would move to postpone until February 22nd.
Second.
moved by Mr. Seagrave, seconded by Mr. Laybourne. And is there any public comment? Thank you. This is starting to get a little bit confusing, isn't it? Any public comment related to the proposed postponement? Related to the postponement?
Yes, just have a question. So if you recommend postponement, that does not necessarily mean that if it on Monday night at the city council that they have to approve that and would go forward. Is that?
Right, it's like I was saying earlier, I mean, that's our recommendation is, but yeah, I mean, the body as a whole certainly doesn't have to vote for that. If they don't see a postponement is fit, they don't have to. That's just a recommendation that would come out of this.
So
body.
possibly then everything could be acted upon Monday night. Is that correct? Even though
It's possible. Yeah, I mean, I can't sit here
Okay.
and say
So,
for
I mean,
sure either way.
all right, exactly. And could you tell me what the percentage would be maybe that the postponement would be accepted? Small?
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Please.
I can't remember the council ever changing a recommendation of a committee. It's maybe happened, but it's very rare. And I don't recall it in the 20-some years I've been up here. And the other part is when the developer's asking for postponement, we rarely go against what the developer's requesting, especially when they ask for more time. So
You're saying that there's a strong chance that they will accept the postponement?
very strong.
Okay, all
I
right.
think all four of us would be surprised if they did not go with the committee's recommendation.
But it still would be wise to be there. Is that correct?
Never hurts.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt.
Okay, thank you.
Further public comment related to the proposed postponement. Seeing and hearing none. Jennifer, do we have any hands raised? All right. Seeing and hearing no public comment, the chair would entertain all those in favor. Those opposed. The recommendation for this proposed ordinance will be for postponement at next Monday's city council meeting. Item number 9, please.
Item number 9, ordinance third reading, annexing to the city of Cheyenne, land located east to Southwest Drive and north of I-80.
Is there a staff report today?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Seth Lloyd. I'm with the City of Cheyenne Planning and Development Department. This proposal proposes annexing land that's effectively part of a county pocket and is near, obviously contiguous with city limits and also near various utilities. There's no changes on the application since the last meeting of this committee, so I have no updates for you, but I'm available for any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Any questions or comments from the committee for Mr. Lloyd on this proposed ordinance on third reading? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Does there happen to be a developer's report with this? Anybody but Mr. Hanson. Mr. Hanson.
Good afternoon.
Now, okay. Shane Hanson, South Surveying Services Agent for the owner. Nothing's changed since we put the application in. It's a simple annexation accompanying a zone change to bring it from county zoning to city, to city zoning.
Any questions from the committee for Mr. Hanson? Jennifer, do we have any hands raised online? Any public comment? What's in the room here on item number 9, this proposed annexation on third reading? Seeing and hearing none. The chair would entertain a motion. Moved by Mr. Laybourne, seconded by Mr. Seagrave. Any further discussion from the committee related to this proposed ordinance on third reading? All those in favor? Those opposed? The recommendation for next Monday's city council meeting will be for approval of this ordinance on third reading. Item number 10, please.
Number 10, ordinance third reading, amending the official zoning map of the city of Cheyenne, changing the zoning classification from county LI light industrial to LI light industrial for land located east of Southwest Drive, north of I-80.
Mr. Lloyd, do you have any further staff report on this item?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Seth Lloyd. I'm with the City of Cheyenne Planning and Development Department. The proposed zoning is LI, which is also the current county zoning and the current city zoning of every parcel that's surrounding this that's under private ownership. There's been no changes in the application, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Any questions from the committee for Mr. Lloyd?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Laybourne.
I'm curious. I can't think off the top of my head which signs are out there, but I believe that this is a area that has large signs along the interstate. Is there going to be any change coming into the city of the number of signs or any consideration of anything different with the signs? Electronic signs, lit signs, what sort of sign requirements will come into play if we annex this?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, so the section of the Unified Development Code 6.5.8 states that any billboard that was around can be, when it annexes into the city, can be used for credits as well. So assuming that all 4 of these billboards were around at the time of the adoption of the regulations, the applicant, the billboards could be modified or moved in accordance with the Unified Development Code, such as they could remove 3 of those billboards and replace it with 1 EMC billboard, or they could remove 3 billboards from this site and put an EMC billboard somewhere else in the city. Or they could remove 3 billboards somewhere else in the city and turn one of these into an electronic billboard. There's a bunch of options available to them that are associated with our billboard regulations, but a cursory review would say that they would get 4 more potential billboards to play with our UDC 6.5.8 billboard section.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Mr. Hanson, did you want to provide additional comments?
Absolutely. Shane Hanson, Style Surveying Services Agent for the owner. The intent is there will be 1 billboard out here that will be upgraded. They're not adding any additional billboards. They're going to be changing 1. They will go through the proper application forms to get that done through the city.
Any additional questions or comments for Mr. Hanson from the committee? Thank you. Jennifer, do we have any hands raised online? Any additional public comment from here what's in the room on this item? The chair would entertain a motion. Moved by Mr. Laybourne, seconded by Mr. Seagrave. Additional questions, comments from the committee? All those in favor? Those opposed? The recommendation for next Monday's city council meeting is for approval of this ordinance on third reading. Item number 11, please.
Number 11, ordinance third reading, vacating West 19th Street west of Grant Avenue, City of Cheyenne, Laramie County, Wyoming, located south of Old Happy Jack Road, west of Missile Drive.
Is there a staff report?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Seth Lloyd. I'm with the City of Cheyenne Planning and Development Department. This proposal proposes vacating an unbuilt right-of-way that was originally dedicated in the 1800s. Tells you about how old it is and how long we've had a chance to develop it. The right-of-way dead ends into the railroad and therefore doesn't really serve any purpose other than possible utilities. There will be a utility easement replacing the right-of-way. That's the nature of the project, and it hasn't changed since our second reading, but I'm available for any further questions regarding this application.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Any questions from the committee for Mr. Lloyd? Mr. Emmons, oh, go ahead.
Well, Mr. Chairman, maybe Mr. Emmons is going to answer it. I didn't know if the impetus for this came from the city or if there's a developer that was requesting it.
Mr. Emmons, would you like to answer that?
Mr. Chairman, City Council members, Brad Emmons, AVI, agent for the applicant for the Back 40 development, which is Dozer LLC, which is to the south of this property. That plat, expedited plat did get approved by the Planning Commission or recommended for approval by the Planning Commission last night. So the vacated portion of 19th Street will be incorporated into a platted lot within that plat. That plat also connects that Grant Avenue on the east side all the way to Lincoln Way. So it adds connectivity through the area. It also extends Paul Smith Way, which has been expanded through the Hitching Post property. So that plat will be actually on the agenda for referral next Monday night. And so it would probably make more sense when you see that plat as well.
Thank you, Mr. Emmons. Dr. Rennie, did that happen to answer your question or did you have further questions?
Yeah, I
for
think
Mr.
it did. I would be interested to see the plat map when we get it Monday. My question actually is related, knowing that there's been interest in developing this area. I wanted to make certain that the developer was not going to need grant for access to the development, but apparently from what Mr. Emmons just said, that no, they do not.
Mr. Chairman, to tell you the truth, we'll need Grant. We don't need 19th. So Grant will be a new north-south road that goes through to connect Old Happy Jack Road with Lincoln Way. So should help with some of the transportation in that area by adding another connection.
Thank you, Mr. Emmons. Further questions or comments from the committee for Mr. Emmons? Yeah. Thank you. Jennifer, do we have any hands raised?
We have Seth Lloyd with his hand raised.
Mr. Lloyd, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to provide a clarification in response to Dr. Rennie's question. Due to the way requests for proposals or applications are made in the Unified Development Code or written in the Unified Development Code, the city is actually acting as the applicant on this project. It's at the we are spurred on by the developer to the south, but because a request for vacation has to be signed by all property owners adjacent to the land, in order for the owners to initiate the vacation, the city went ahead and initiated this vacation. That I just wanted to make that clarification for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Any further questions from the committee for Mr. Lloyd? Thank you. Any further public comment from here in the room on item number 11? Seeing and hearing none, the chair would entertain a motion. Moved by Dr. Rennie, seconded by Mr. Seagrave. Any further questions or comments from the committee? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? The recommendation for next Monday's city council meeting will be for approval of this ordinance on third reading. Item number 15.
Number 15, resolution authorizing the mayor and the city clerk to sign a final plat for Dell Range Edition 6 filing, a replat of a portion of tract 25 Dell Range Edition, City of Cheyenne, Laramie County, Wyoming, located southwest of the intersection of Ridge Road and Holland Court.
Mr. Lloyd, do you have additional comments and staff report related to this item?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Seth Lloyd with the City of Cheyenne Planning and Development Department. The request in front of you is a final plat for approximately 10 acres of land that is concurrently being annexed and having the zoning map amendment that were previously on the agenda. This is actually the first time this item's been in front of you, but it's a relatively simple, straightforward process. Basically, the plat proposes consolidating a bunch of former lot lines and creating one large parcel with an easement for the Suncor pipeline on the western side. The proposed zoning is NR3, and the lot proposed would work in the NR3 zone for multifamily or possibly some other uses, such as a church or say maybe a recreational facility that might receive a conditional use approval or something along those lines. Obviously, this is tied to multifamily at this time, but other options might be available should this plat and zone change and annexation application go through. Staff recommends approval of the plat, and at the Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission recommended approval of this plat by a vote of 5-4. I'm available for any questions on this item.
Mr. Chairman.
I had questions for Mr. Lloyd.
Mr. Chairman, in view of the postponements of the previous two related items, I'm assuming we should keep this one moving concurrently and postpone it as well, or does staff have an opinion?
Mr. Chair, that would be proper to postpone this one as well. I think that it would be best to postpone all three items.
Thank you, Mr. Lloyd. Any further questions from the committee for Mr. Lloyd? Does the developer wish to add anything at this time? Okay. The developer does not. He's shaking his head no for the record. Yeah, they are available, but they've talked about this one a lot. Okay. Further public comment from here in the room. Seeing none, do we have any raised hands online? Okay. Seeing and hearing no public comment, the chair would entertain a motion. Moved by Mr. Seagrave, seconded by Mr. Laybourne. Dr. Rennie. Moved by Dr. Rennie to postpone, seconded by Mr. Laybourne. Any public comment related to the proposed postponement? Any hands raised? Seeing and hearing none. Any further questions or comments from the committee related to the proposed postponement? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? The recommendation for next Monday's city council meeting for this resolution will be for a 2-week postponement. Item number 17, please.
Number 17, resolution directing city staff to prepare a memorandum of understanding between the City of Cheyenne and WJE LLC regarding acceptance of tracks 1, 2, and 3, Settle Ridge 18th filing subdivision as open space and defining private maintenance responsibility.
Is there a staff report?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Charles Bloom, Planning and Development Director. This is a memorandum, or sorry, this is a resolution that would ultimately, if passed, direct staff to execute a memorandum of understanding with the developer of Saddle Ridge to accept several pieces of land that are surplus lands within their subdivision. Recently, Saddle Ridge 18th was annexed into the city, and you recently saw a subdivision for Saddle Ridge 18 subdivision. This is located immediately south of Cheyenne Hills Church, and it is northwest of the intersection of Pershing and Christensen Road. Within the middle of that subdivision, there is one large hill, mountain, high area of land that is challenging to develop, that they have carved out as open space. That is one of the properties that is proposed to be, that the applicant wishes to convey to the city. The applicant is present and they have attached their request letter to the staff report packet, which is included, and he will give a presentation to the benefits of accepting this land. The city does have concerns with accepting surplus land. There is a proposed HOA that the applicant has indicated would end up maintaining this land in perpetuity. However, we do have some concerns with the ultimate track record of that maintenance continuing to lie on the homeowners association, because sometimes it's believed that people could come knocking on the city's door to maintain it in the event the homeowners association ceases to maintain it. Right now, there are a lot of detention ponds and other areas in the community that are owned by developers still, that are owned by homeowners associations, and we frequently do get those phone calls to maintain. And then that typically ends up in the city having to exert extra effort to ensure that there are maintenance is getting done. However, one common theme I've heard regarding homeowners associations in the community is folks have indicated that a lot of them have failed or have ceased to exist. I did take a look online and through different resources to see if I could really identify, well, how many homeowners associations typically do fail in the United States annually, or, during any given periods. And surprisingly, I was not able to find any data that really justified that homeowners associations fail. So I don't believe the perception of a potential failure of a homeowners association should be a concern regarding future maintenance. With this homeowners association being formed, this would essentially be a covenant that would run against every lot within the subdivision. So in the event that maintenance was failing or maintenance was not occurring, the city would be able to initiate an enforcement action. It would be through the local court, the district court, to ensure that the property owners are maintaining the lands. With that, staff is open to questions here regarding this resolution. We do have concerns with taking this because it will be the perception that this is city land, or that we would be expected to maintain, even though it is to be maintained by a property owners association.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Questions from the committee for Mr. Bloom before we ask for a developer's report?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Dr. Ray.
Through you to Mr. Bloom, if I recall, this is an area that was discussed in the past. I remember that hill because I jokingly said the city doesn't have a good sledding hill, and this would maybe be perfect for that. But I also remember that the Cheyenne Rec and Events really was not excited about this parcel because, again, because of that hill, they thought it had very limited uses for them. So as I don't see Jeannie Vetter here, but I didn't know if it looks like Jason is. I didn't know if CRE had an opinion on this piece of property yet. So thank you.
Mr. Sanchez, if you'd like to make some comments, we don't want to put you on the spot, but if you have an opinion about it.
Mr. Chair, Jason Sanchez, Community Rec and Events. It's a tough one. It's a hill. So what can we do with it? What recreation opportunities can we provide other than possibly sledding? Right now, the way the road lines up with that hill, my fear would be that if kids are sledding, that they land in the road. And so other than sledding, I don't know what other recreation opportunities we'd be able to provide on that area.
Thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Additional questions or comments for Mr. Bloom or Mr. Sanchez?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Mr. Seagrave.
through you. What do we consider maintaining? What's the homeowners association going to do? What should we expect?
Chair, through you to the committee, I will actually defer that question to the applicant. They'll present and they can identify what their anticipated maintenance schedule is and what their development program would be for that piece of land.
Mr. Chair. I was just curious what the city is going to expect. I mean, are they gonna mow it? Are they going to, what are they gonna do? What do we expect them to do?
Chair, through you to Councilmember Seagrave, and that's a great question. I understand that rephrasing now. Our expectation is that we would take no responsibility whatsoever. They would be responsible for maintenance of all of the drainage features that are on that site. That would include the underground conveyance on the northern parcel that brings water in from Cheyenne Hills Church into the system. It would also require maintenance by the Property Owners Association of the grass levels on the hillside and maintenance of the detention pond located at the northwest corner of Christensen and Pershing. In addition, in the event that there's any type of erosion or anything that occurs due to development or rainwater, that those responsibilities would fall on the Properties Owners Association as well. Our vision would be zero maintenance, zero staff members committed in perpetuity for that land.
Thank you.
Anything further from the committee for Mr. Bloom? Thank you. Developers report. Mr. Edwards, if you'd like.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for your consideration of this item today. I have a couple of things I'd like to go over, but first, if I could correct a couple of things that were stated. So number one, this isn't just one hill. It's actually a series of hills. It's more of a plateau. And in this case, it was actually not carved out because it was hard to develop. We could have, as evidenced by the homes next to it, we could have created another series of home lots that would have sat on that ridge line that have what we consider exceptional views looking down back west at the city. I mean, you can see Long's Peak from up there. And so we really, the general theme with this area, because the topography was so challenging, we aimed to work with the topography, not against it, meaning we didn't design something on paper and then try to make the land fit it. We let the land dictate the design. And in that process, we did try to maximize the amount of view lots that we could because of those characteristics. We tried to maximize the amount of lots that back to open space, including this particular parcel. But because we feel the views are so exceptional, there's literally a feeling up there, and we wanted the public to be able to experience that as well. So with that said, I want to talk a little bit more about the vision for this open space area in some of these notes that I made. But first, I want to start off with how open space was developed historically in Saddle Ridge. And I know it's been a long day. I'll try to keep this as short as possible. So we started designing Saddle Ridge in 2005, 2006. There were some considerations with Whitney Road, which we ended up having to construct as a condition of our development. But the point is, these open space considerations that we began to work through with the City Parks Department were pre-UDC. As I'm sure you folks know, the UDC was developed in 2012. I'm pretty sure we broke ground on Saddle Ridge officially in late 2006, could be 2007. That doesn't really matter for this purposes. But the point being is there was no real definable method until the UDC came along. And so we sat down with the Parks Department and essentially set the stage for donating fairly significant amounts of open space ground associated for the benefit of the community. So we needed a methodology in order to do that. So with each given phase, depending on the various open space parcels, we would enter into a memorandum of understanding with the Parks Department, whereby we would build the lion's share of all the improvements, the pathways, the grading, berm construction, natural rock features, which we're still adding to this day. But I did some measurements, and in the Saddle Ridge neighborhood, today, there are 2.2 miles of official city greenway that run through that. Of those 2.2 miles, 1.5 of those miles were 100% paid by us. 0.7 miles of that greenway were entered into more recently. We did a 50-50 cost share with the city. What's important about that 50-50 cost share is we also structured it so all of the city's funds came directly out of community facility fees that were collected within the boundary of Saddle Ridge at the building permit stage. I believe the number is $400 per home, per building permit. So meaning, even though the city contributed that 50%, there was still nothing technically out of their pocket. It was all generated by virtue of the Saddle Ridge sales. So we felt and still do feel, frankly, that was a good deal. And so we've, as I mentioned, we've been developing this area now for roughly 16 years, and we get to the last filing, this 18th filing, and all of a sudden the system has changed. It was indicated to us the city no longer has the resources to do maintenance, whereby which we eventually agreed. We had some discussions about that. And then it was communicated to us that let's continue to work together. Would you consider forming an HOA? Which we did. We have formally formed an HOA. It's filed, it's on record for this area. Typically in the past, we would work with the Parks Department on those memorandums of understanding that include the 50% cost share, and then present that actual MOU to council. This time, because of some of the policy changes, they're asking us to put this resolution in front of you in order to actually draft this MOU. This particular MOU will be completely different. There will be no responsibilities of the city and responsibilities of the developer. I just want to state clearly, the city will have no maintenance responsibilities in this area whatsoever. It will be on the HOA, and that's basically the function of the MOU, with the understanding that the city would then accept ownership of these parcels. To us, it's very important that the city owns these parcels because we're planning what we feel are some exciting improvements. Some of those peaks that I mentioned, Dr. Rennie, you actually hit it right on the head. I grew up here, and there's no places to sled. There's no open poke that I know of. There's no other city park that has these type of features. And so we really enhance that. And to Mr. Sanchez's concern about it's Wilderness Trail is the road where the hills go down into. We plan to build, and there's some natural landing areas there, not only from north to south, so coming off the peaks towards Wilderness Trail, but also east-west, kind of creating a valley. So, the roads down here and the sledders are coming in here, and they're landing in a soft valley, for the littler kids. On one of the picnic areas, one of the things I've been most excited about for years now, since we first initiated this concept, is we have designs to put a picnic area on the highest hill out there. Again, for the benefit of the public, we envision both hard and soft surface trails, expanding off of the city greenway that will run along the north edge of Wilderness Trail, which will lead up to these picnic areas. There's a county resident out there who had a son that passed away in the first Iraq War. And so they used to recreate on these hills. We formed a relationship with them as we've developed, and we'd like to put a memorial up there for this gentleman. And we just think it would be really, really neat, genuinely excited to be able to offer this place for folks to watch the Thunderbirds, although I just saw they're not going to be back this next year, which is a huge bummer for me. So we want if these are owned by the HOA, well, let me talk a little bit more about the characteristics of the open space. So we plan to leave it all as native ground, the whole thing. We don't plan any irrigation, any of that. We basically plan for these open areas to have soft surface trails in the summer for mountain biking and things like that. And then sledding options, winter recreation options. And that's about it. There is a dual detention pond area that we have planned. And I should have brought an exhibit that clearly shows this, but it's still too early in the discussion to even know. We designed to have a dual detention pond / potential recreation area in a certain area, about the size of a elementary school football field, maybe about 75% of that, but that's neither here nor there. The other important reason, well, number one, let me say, if there is an HOA there, we have strong concerns that we're creating these improvements that are going to attract the public. And we want the public to be able to utilize these, and we don't want any, hey, you can't be here, any of that stuff. Number two, the governmental immunity is very important to us because of these recreational features that we're offering. You know, if you think about on the mountain biking side, if you envision the northern city park where Meadowlark Elementary School is, that's kind of what we envision, just kind of informal routes for folks to be able to utilize those hills. So that hits at what their use is. They're not just going to stay as hills. They're for the public to enjoy the views, the characteristics of it, the unique nature of that. So given that it's all going to stay, at least at this time, it's all going to stay native, that implies very low maintenance responsibilities, whether it's us with the HOA, which it is established now, or if the city, as to staff's concerns about the HOA failing, Charles, I appreciate your additional comments about that. I did some searching around the nation as well, and I couldn't find evidence of HOAs failing. I will say that when Saddle Ridge is completely built out, there'll be a total of roughly 1,500 residents there. I believe it's a strong, robust community. I may be partial, but I think people enjoy living there. And, you know, we put our hearts into this. We put a lot of time into thinking about what new unique things we can offer the public that might not be available around town. I will say, if this was a completely new project, if we didn't have a 16, 17-year history, I probably wouldn't be pushing back. But again, it just seems right for all the reasons stated, and also just to stay consistent, to close out Saddle Ridge Master Plan as a whole under the same format. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to have 80% of a neighborhood done and then impose an HOA on the last 20%, which we discussed in detail with staff. But we agreed to do that. This particular HOA is only going to be responsible for the open space areas that are within the 18th filing and the monument signs long-term, the entrance signs that lead into Saddle Ridge. The Point has followed this model. The Point project here in town, the city owns all of their open space parcels. So we believe in this request. We don't feel it puts anybody at risk. We feel like we're abiding by the city's new maintenance policies, trying to work with the city the best we can. And I thank you for your consideration. And I can answer any questions if anybody has.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. We appreciate that.
Yeah.
Questions or concerns from the committee for Mr. Edwards? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Edwards, I assume I'm just going by the map with the reddish pink areas are the areas in question that the MOA addresses. Has any of the areas adjacent to that been developed with housing yet?
Not yet, no,
Okay.
and if I may just point out on that, for the benefit of the committee, so pre-open space parcels in question, there's a little parcel.
No, you're good. Go ahead and aim it towards these guys. You're good.
Okay, so one of the open space parcels right here is tract. This is specifically created to handle the drainage from Cheyenne Hills Church. All of that drainage has to come down and be engineered. So we basically accepting their water through a pipe right here. That drainage will continue down into this big kind of central area. This is really the area in question, this big central piece. Those hills that I mentioned, the series of hills, they're kind of right in here. The picnic area that I mentioned is right here. Here is Wilderness Trail. Thank you. Here is the one detention pond that's tracked 3 of these. So really all the recreational options, this is a series of hills up here. And in answer to your question, Dr. Rennie, no, all we have done so far is the overlot dirt work for basically the southern portion, which is these 89 cottage lots here.
Thank you. And I guess my other question is Mr. Cook can maybe explain it to us later since he lives in the Point, but it seems like the Point is the only HOA I'm really familiar with that has survived over the years and seems to have functioned well. And obviously that's been maintained by Guardian and not by the homeowners themselves. So once the HOA is formed, what will Edward's role in this be? What I don't understand is, I presume when you buy your piece of property, you're contractually obligated to join the HOA and contribute to it after that. And
yes.
And perhaps Mr. Cook or our attorney can explain what recourse if someone says, no, I don't want to be a member anymore, or don't want to pay anymore. I mean, what recourse does Guardian or you have to ensure that gets collected? So as I said, it's worked well for us in the Point, but that seems to be the only way, or the only one I can recall working really well. So
sure. And
those are my questions and reservations, since this is somewhat of a new approach.
No, fair enough, fair enough. And if I could address a couple of those. So number one, what our role would be is we've already formed the HOA. It's of record. As you indicated, Dr. Rennie, these people it's clearly communicated to them as a condition of purchasing this property. They have to participate in the HOA. It is our aim to keep the HOA cost as low as possible. And we estimate it just so happened that we hadn't sold any lots in the 16th filing, which is the newest filing that actually has infrastructure. By the time these HOA discussions came on board. So because we hadn't sold any of those, we were able to add that to the HOA as well. That was an additional 26 lots. Given the nature, again, going back to the maintenance of it, it's going to, again, if you envision that northern park there, we really feel strongly that we can keep the monthly dues around $10 to $15. And that works out to roughly 170 residents, if I remember correctly. Just south of 200. And you really think about it, there's fire regulations where you have to keep native grass at a certain elevation, and it needs to be mowed periodically. Right now, the nature of it, there's cactuses out there, and it's not thick grass. It's Mr. Bloom's been out there. We walked up that hill together. The highest hill where we want to put the picnic area. So we're trying to see what the soft surface pathways, again, like the park on the north side. We just don't know what, regular maintenance of the monument signs. There's 2 of those now. We're planning a 3rd. So again, we may be partial, but this isn't an irrigated park that's going to have sprinkler system components and, demanding mowing schedules. And so our role would be, now the HOA is formed, we would formally start it. We would have the first meeting, elect officers with the eventual goal that it would take over, and, there would be homeowners that are the officers, and we'd want that to happen as soon as possible.
Mr. Chair.
Dr. Rennie, did you have further questions? Mr. Seagrave, go ahead.
Yes, sir. You have implied and maybe stated that the city has asked you to form this HOA already without approval of this resolution?
Yeah, I would say we were advised to start an HOA, yes.
What if this fails?
If this fails, then the HOA will own the land. The HOA will have to own the land, and then we'll open up the opportunity of, hey, you can't come in here, and the governmental immunity issue.
I feel really bad that we've asked you to do this without approval. I don't have another question. I have a statement. If I were a homeowner in this area doing a monthly payment, I would want it to be private. I would not want it to open up to the city. If I'm paying to maintain it, I want to use it. I don't want it open to 100,000 other people. So I don't know. Everybody has a different way of looking at it, but that's, if I'm paying for it, I want to use it. So I think, in my opinion, the HOA should own it. Thank you.
Fair enough, Mr. Seagrave, and in defense of staff, it was kind of a working discussion. It was suggested to us. We, and Charles, correct me if I'm wrong, I do feel like we were directed, but we're okay with it. We understand.
Further questions or comments from the committee for Mr. Edwards? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Well, at this time, the chair would entertain a motion. Thank you. That's why you're here. Thank you. Let me backtrack on that. I don't need a motion at this point. Do we have any public comment? Do we have any raised hands? Do we have any raised hands online? Mr. Bloom.
Chair, members of the committee, Charles Bloom, Planning and Development Director. I just did want to clarify the direction regarding an HOA. We've had a lot of discussions with the developer on this. And throughout the process, it has been discussed that we had no desire for maintenance, and there's discussion of an HOA being formed. We had indicated that as an acceptable path forward, in the event the governing body were to accept this land, we would expect an HOA to be established. The developer, we did not set a timeline indicating that the HOA had to be established prior to consideration of this or prior to the agreement that one would have to be put in place ultimately if this was done. So the timing of the establishment of an HOA to have it done prior to consideration of that item, that is a timeline that was set by the developer there. So just want to clarify for the record that we did not mandate that HOA be established prior to consideration of this item.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Any further? Go ahead.
I agree with Charles Bloom. Thank you.
Okay. Any additional, thank you, gentlemen. Any additional public comment from here in the room or online through raised hands? Seeing and hearing none, the chair at this point would entertain a motion from the committee.
Mr. Chairman, I move to adopt.
Do we have a second? Moved by Dr. Rennie, seconded by Mr. Laybourne. Further questions or comments from the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Dr. Rennie.
The resolution just directs the staff to prepare the MOU. I presume the MOU would then come back through us at some point.
Just for the record, the city attorney Boster and Mr. Bloom are both nodding their heads in agreement that that is the case. Follow-up question?
Yeah, one more question. I just wanted to confirm, I think Mr. Edwards was the one that stated it, but does the city own the open areas at the point? Is that accurate, or is Guardian still own that?
Well, we have, there is a private park, and I'll let, go ahead, Mr. Emmons. He's a resident up there as well.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
tell you.
there is both within the point parts of the trail system are owned privately, parts of the parks are owned privately, and parts are owned by the city. The main park down the middle and the greenway sections, the official greenway sections are all owned by the city. The private park in the middle, and then the other trail systems that go behind houses and stuff like that are owned by the HOA.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions or comments from the committee? Go ahead, whichever. Go ahead, Mr. Laybourne.
I have a question for Mr. Emmons. So understanding the greenway sections that are owned by the city, is there are the other path systems right of ways dedicated to the public, or are they private to the HOA members?
Mr. Chairman, through you, I believe so there's no signage up.
Right.
But to reserve, if you wanted to reserve the gazebo area within the private park, that is only done for the residents within the park. I mean, within the subdivision. The greenways and the trail systems are not marked. However, I believe, and Charles, one access easement that was not adjacent to public right of way was closed by one section of the point HOA. So there is areas that they did that one, and it's like a really small section was closed off to just be private, but the rest of the ones are open to anybody that wants to go on them.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Seagrave.
I'll be very brief.
You're okay.
I believe this is the second time we've seen this. I see really no advantage for the city to own this. We're going to use our governmental immunity and get virtually no benefit. I don't think most residents will even know this is open to them. Most people outside of the subdivision won't even be aware of it. So why should we take on the responsibility and potential liability, although we do have governmental immunity? So I will be a no. Thank you.
Okay. Further questions or comments from the committee?
Mr. Chair, through you, I'll be brief.
Mr. Edwards, do you have additional questions or comments?
Yes, sir. I'll be brief. I just wanted to quickly touch on Mr. Seagraves. I just want to reemphasize for everybody that this is a very large area. It's not a pocket park. There's already people out there that are walking their dogs that we catch a lot. It's an attractive area. It's very visible because of its characteristics from the intersection of Pershing and Christensen. So respectfully, Mr. Seagrave, I agree with you. If it was a smaller area, and putting myself in the resident shoes, I wouldn't want the public in that I was having to maintain. But this area is so large and so expansive. I truly feel the benefit to the city is for the benefit of the citizens. Thank you.
Any further public comment related to this item? Do we have any further public comment in the room? Do we have any further public comment, any raised hands online? And just to backtrack, Madam Clerk, if we may, we do have a motion in a second, I believe, correct? I just want to make sure where we are. Okay. Any further questions or comments from the committee? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor? Those opposed? The recommendation for next Monday's city council meeting on this resolution will be for it to be adopted. Last item, please, which I believe is number 18.
Number 18, resolution expressing the support of the governing body and directing city staff to work with the Wyoming Department of Transportation to name the new segment of road created by the Lincoln Way Service Interchange project to recognize the USS Cheyenne Naval Submarine.
Do we have a staff report? I see one of the sponsors here as well. I'm not sure if he's here to speak, but do we have a staff report on this?
Mr. Chair, Charles Bloom, Planning Development Director.
Go ahead.
Council President Johnson asked me to just sort of get a little bit of background on this item at first, and I put together that memo for you all. As part of the Interstate I-25 and Interstate 80 reconstruction project, there is a proposed change to the northbound I-25 on and off ramps that are located just to the west of the Home Depot. What they propose to do is they'll actually extend a new overpass over the roadway, because right now by Home Depot, you get on the interstate, you turn right to go north, or after you cross I-80, you would exit to go south. I will pull up a map real quick, which will probably make it a little bit easier. So that, it'll be 1 second as soon as I get into the Zoom meeting. Be a couple more seconds. Here we go. All right, it should be sharing momentarily. Should be. There we go. All right, so as you can see, and this is in the memo. This is the on and off ramp that we're talking about right now. So again, there's Home Depot to the east, so this is immediately to the west. The Plan Cheyenne future land use and transportation map does show a future minor arterial street that does extend across the interstate, which is unnamed right now. Eventually that road does loop around to the west, and it does again cross under I-80 a little bit further to the west. In looking at a potential area to name a new road, USS Cheyenne, this is probably one of the most new prominent roads that's unnamed in the community that exists today without actually taking an established road and renaming it. So Council President Johnson had recognized that, yeah, this is probably a good location for it. We did run through sort of a little draft here showing, well, what could this signage look like? Of course, full disclaimer, this signage would be required to be approved by the DOT. When you start to put a lot of letters on streets, signs get larger, and they have to be engineered to withstand winds. Sometimes we've had some signage that has had some issues staying up in the wind. We all probably remember some of those issues back from 2019 from the wayfinding program. So the final design of this would be something that would be required by the DOT. But again, this street name would be the USS Cheyenne SSN 773, which is the name of the USS Cheyenne, are the namesake submarine for the city of Cheyenne. To make sure that we continue with the interstate pattern and the need for this exit, we would also work with YDOT to come with acceptable language to provide that linkage to the purpose of the exit, which is for people to get to West Lincoln Way, which also serves as a federal highway, US 30, and it also serves as an interstate business route. So with that, staff is recommending approval of this resolution. This resolution would essentially support the naming of that road and that interchange in the future whenever it does occur to follow that name. I'm open for any questions you may have, and Council President Johnson is here to provide any additional details on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Bloom. Questions or comments from the committee for Mr. Bloom?
Mr. Chairman,
Dr. Rennie?
so will the street sign actually read USS Cheyenne and then in parentheses, the SSN-773, close parentheses? I mean, that just seems like a really long name to me. And
Well, I believe you stated, Mr. Bloom, that maybe, I mean, that would ultimately, how that read would ultimately be up to YDOT.
But that's what but is that what we're asking in the resolution, that it have that entire name?
Mr. Chair, through you to Dr. Rainey, not necessarily. We do have a local submarine expert here on staff that might be able to provide some details regarding naming of submarines and what's official. But what we have set up for the resolution, and you can see it right here, is it is specifically set that this naming is to recognize that namesake submarine. So if it would be required to be just USS Cheyenne, or if it would have everything put together, it could satisfy either one of those. Ultimately, we'll have to review it with the MUTCD standards, which is the engineering Bible essentially for how roadway names are done and the length of roadway signage. But Chief of Staff Warshak, are you able to address the naming of the submarine? He's on the Zoom call. Okay.
Chief of Staff, you can unmute yourself just to speak if you'd like to.
But members of the committee. Oh, he's come down. Perfect.
Chief, did you want to speak to this, to the naming? Well, we do.
We do. Mr. Chairman, I think Mr. Bloom answered with the fact that the main purpose is just to recognize the submarine, and the actual naming on the sign is still up to the DOT.
My name is Andy Warshak, Chief of Staff for Mayor Collins, City of Cheyenne. So the way that Charles presented the name, that's exactly how you write it in the Navy. Yeah, it does seem a little bit long, but that's within, you look up any ship name, Midway, Yorktown, Enterprise, Cheyenne, they're all written with the name and then their designation and their whole number.
So there's, if the chair may, so Chief, there's likely to be, I mean, obviously this probably isn't the first time this has ever been done nationwide. So there's likely to be some precedent to go off of.
I'm sure we could find another city. There's quite a few cities that have named streets for their namesake vessel.
Thank you, Chief. We appreciate it. Any further questions for Chief Warshak? Any questions for Mr. Bloom? Thank you. Any further public comment? Well, all right, look, I'm sorry, it's been a really long meeting. Are there further questions from the committee for staff before we get to further public comment? No, go ahead. Now's the time. Okay, all right. If we must, is there a further public comment related to this item?
Yes, sir. Richard Johnson, 612 McGovern. So I basically wanted to say thank you to Charles. He is correct. The reason we included the SSN number on there was going back to the Highway Department standards. So we wanted it included in the resolution, but if it was too long, it could be removed under those standards to leave it at USS Cheyenne, but we wrote it in to specifically make it in case they could add it. And then also thank you to Andy for the historical part of the resolution that he put together on this. That was extremely helpful. And then one of our own city employees is the the person 2 years ago that had asked me to look into renaming a road. He was in the Navy after we graduated from high school. And so he thought that this would be a suiting feature to have in Cheyenne. Charles and I have been talking about this for over 2 years now with various roads that we wanted to do through, even back when we were looking at College Drive in regards to when that was supposed to have a 90-degree angle, if that was to be renamed. And then when this came forward with this being unnamed for this interchange, it seemed a lot more suitable. And then also because of the submarines recognition that happened on January 1st, I was reminded by the same person that spoke with me 2 years ago about the award, and it seemed fitting to do it now. So that's why we put it together in recognition of the submarines achievements that were done on January 1st. And if you have any other questions, I hope I can answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Are there further questions or comments from the committee for Mr. Johnson? Now you looked poised and ready to go. I just. Okay, you must have a client. Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Is there further public comment to hear what's in the room, or Jennifer, do we have any hands raised? The chair would entertain a motion at this time. Moved by Dr. Rennie, seconded by Mr. Seagrave. Further questions or comments from the committee? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor? Those opposed? The recommendation for next Monday's meeting will be to adopt. And seeing as there's no other business, this meeting's adjourned.